part of ultra running. As we seek the buckles, the finish lines, and the crazy distances, we experience a lot of failure along the way too. I'm Heidi.
And I'm Michelle, and we're both ultra runners and ultra running coaches who want to know more about the dreaded DNF, how, when, and why they happen, but more importantly, how we learn, we move forward, and we get back up to run again.
Hey everybody, welcome to Let's Run That Again. Thank you so much for listening. I'm Heidi Baker.
And I'm Michelle Goldberg.
And we are here to talk about DNFs and ultra running and how we can deal with them, learn from them, and grow from them. Please subscribe to the podcast so you never miss an episode. And leaving a review and sharing is always so helpful and appreciated.
All right. So today we're really excited to have a special guest with us. He's a good friend and just so many amazing things that I could say about Steve Epifano. Steve, thank you so much for being with us. Steve is an ultra runner. Steve's an ultra runner who lives in Southern California, where I like to believe it's always sunny and beautiful. You can find him on IG at SoCal Runner, and we'll put links to all of Steve's info in the show notes. But Steve has completed distances, competed in and completed distances everywhere from 5K to 250 miles. Steve is a 3-time finisher of the Cocodona 250, most recently just a few months ago, not even, in May 2024. Steve is a coach. He's a USCA certified running coach, ultra running coach, nutrition coach, all around incredible mentor and great guy. And we're super happy to have him with us today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. Yeah, hopefully I can live up to that introduction.
So Steve, can you give us just kind of a brief summary of how you got into the sport of ultra running, your background in it, and just kind of tell us a little bit about yourself. So for any listeners that don't know you or follow you, they can kind of get what Steve's all about.
Yeah, sure. So I ran cross country and track in grade school and high school, and then went to college and did not do that. I just got 30 pounds heavier and lifted weights, really. That's about all I did in college, and drank a lot. And then when I got back, I really wasn't living the best healthy lifestyle that I could. And then and I talked about it in other podcasts, and I can go into it if you want to, but I got back into ultra running 2013 after a health scare, where I have a heart condition that's a bicuspid aortic valve and an aortic aneurysm. So it went from I thought I was going to immediately have open heart surgery, but eventually it was just where they're just looking at it, and they still do the same thing. They just look at it every year now, make sure it's not growing. And with that condition, you can't lift anything over 10 pounds, do any heavy weight lifting exercises, stuff like that. So that's when I got back into running. I was like, this is the only thing I could do. I can't get my heart rate over 180 for extensive periods of time. So I just got right back into running, changed my lifestyle a lot, lost 30 pounds, and just wanted to be healthier and be around for my kids. Because at that time I had a 3-year-old. So I was like, yeah, I gotta do something to make some changes to where I'm going to be around for a little bit. And my cardiologist and my surgeon told me that I probably, well, they didn't say probably, they said I wouldn't do anything over a half marathon. But as I was going and progressing, I just kept everything really low and slow and low heart rate training the whole time. And this is before I really knew what I was doing really. They just kept clearing me over and over again. And I did my first marathon in 2018. the Philly Marathon, which will always have a special place in my heart. And then 2019, I moved out to Southern California with my family for work. And 2019, I did my second official marathon. And then 2020 was, I was like, okay, that's it. And then, but they just kept clearing me for more and more. And then 2020 was my first official 50K. And I still had no idea what I was doing. It was like right before, it's February of 2020. So it was right before like everything kind of shut down. So yeah, I still had no idea what I was doing. Just kind of went out there and ran it like a marathon, and it beat me up. And I was like, okay, that's it. I think the 50K is fine. I've done what I've done, and I'm out. And then I just kind of like fell in love with the sport and really the community of it. And I was like, oh well, there's more things than a 50K. Like, and it's funny when I went to pick up my bib for the 50K at the Orange Curtain, it was called, in Cerritos, California. We saw these people. It was like kind of at night, and we saw these people running with like lighted vests and stuff. And I was talking to my wife Katie, and I was like, "What are they doing?" And she's like, "I think they're doing a 24-hour race." I was like, "Well, that's just crazy, and I would never do that. That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard of." And then I think it was like 2 years later or a year later, I was doing a 24-hour race in Henderson, Nevada.
There is so much there, and I think
there
it
is.
just says it's it says so much about you and your character and your tenacity that your response to a doctor, like a medical professional telling you, "I'm sorry, but you have this major issue. You're never going to run anything more than a half marathon." Like you have to, like it's a very real thing that you have to keep your heart rate low, and that's something that you continue to deal with. But like your response to that is like, okay, well, let's see what I really, like, screw you, let me see what I really can do.
Right.
And you've just like, wow, you really proved them wrong.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I just try to, that's really when my philosophy started, like really along the lines of like stoicism and stuff. Like, just control what you can control. That's really what it's all about.
Yeah.
That's like the only thing you can do.
100%. That's something Heidi and I have talked a lot about, that I think we really, really would love to just share that message from the mountaintops, is that,
The control.
there's so much that you can't control, and that's just gonna blow the way the wind blows, but you control what you can and just keep moving forward.
Yeah.
So Steve, I know you wanted to talk about like that first 50K, which I think it's pretty cool for someone as experienced as you and running distances up to 250, Cocodona 250, like that. You want to talk about that first 50K. So like, tell us what that race was, like what it was like for you, what happened. I want to hear more about that first experience.
There's 2 or 3 50Ks that kind of, when you're talking about like hard things that happen, and I didn't DNF them, but they were like chases or races, I would say, that kind of changed the trajectory of like, hey, this is hard no matter what distance it is, and you always have to respect the distance. Like, that's really what I've found. And one was just the 50K. The first 50K was I was like, oh, it's only like 5 more miles past the marathon. How much harder could it be?
It shouldn't be that hard, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I had no idea about nutrition. Like, I was doing tailwind. That was about it. I wasn't eating anything. So I really did just run it like as a marathon. And it went pretty well until like the last, 5 or 6 miles. And then that's where you start to bonk. And it was started getting really hot. And like, I was wearing a really crappy pack, like a Camelback that just bounced everywhere, chafing all over the place. And then I think I don't even think I had tailwind that one. I'm blanking on it now, but I think I was just doing like water and Gatorade and all that kind of fun stuff. But yeah, it was definitely a bonk. And then But I ended up, and this is where the humility part comes in. I ended up coming in third, and I was like, okay, that's pretty cool. It's a smaller race, so I was like, okay, that's cool. I guess I could do it. Like, this will be it from here on out. I'll just be podium every kind of race I go. And then my first like true trail 50K was the Black Mountain in San Diego, the Black Mountain 50K, where it's like out in the middle of the desert. It has some really technical climbs in the beginning, and then really a real big technical descent, like in the middle, and then just desert from mile like 19 to like 25. So you're just cruising through the desert, getting hot, and then right back, and then you go right back up that technical climb.
Wow.
And I was like, I told my friend, I mean, there was like a course record for like $10,000. I was like, I don't think I'll get that. But I told my friend who lives in San Diego, I was like, you know what? It's only going to take me a couple hours. Like, why don't we meet for lunch after and we'll just hang out? And that's what, like, when I was training for it, I had no idea. I didn't really train for elevation. I did a couple hill sprints here and there. And then that course just chewed me up and then spit me out and reminded me that, like, hey, running is hard. And like, it was my first trail run. So I had like crappy trail shoes. I had like my 8-year-old like Sauconys, I think, that just were so bad. I was getting blisters, and like I walked probably 3/4 of it. I was just like, I didn't have salt. There was no sodium. Wasn't eating
Wow.
anything. It was just tailwind. I was like, wow, this was really rough.
You were probably out there a long time
Yeah.
without any new, yeah.
So I think I had like watermelon at the aid stations and stuff. I was like, how are people eating like this? Like they're just like
Right.
gorging themselves at the aid stations. But that's also what helped me like fall in love with the sport, was like, oh, I have no idea what I'm doing. I think I should probably learn what I'm doing. And then I've kind of taken that mentality of like, no matter what the distance is, look, even running a 5K is hard. The 5Ks hurt a lot.
So hard.
Yeah,
Oh
I
my
don't like
God.
5Ks.
I'd rather
No
run
way.
I'd rather run a 50K than a 5K.
Yes,
Um,
absolutely. People think I'm crazy when I say that,
yeah,
but I'm like, I have no desire to run a 5K.
no, I
It's
don't have
not,
to run
it's
too
really
fast.
hard, and yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
like a trail 50K is ideal because you just kind of like hang out and you're running and looking at scenery and stuff, and it it hurts, but it doesn't hurt as hard, I think, for like a 5K does. But it just put in my head that like, just because there's 2 times where that happened, but just be humble with the distance, because it's a long distance no matter what distance it is, and no matter what your previous performance is, does not guarantee a good performance or a good race in what you think is a good race on any of your distances.
Yeah.
You could put in a really good training cycle, you could have a really good training session, but just some days it's just the course just beats you up on those days. And then that's all part of it. You got to take that as like as a learning process. And what did you do right during the race? What did you do wrong? Those kind of things. And
Yeah.
that's when I did everything wrong in that race. And it was just, I just think because it was too cocky, when I was like, oh, I'll just be done and be over with. And I had no idea that elevation was a thing.
Yeah.
So that like learning mentality, you took that then and you decided to learn how to do it and go even farther, I guess. What
Yeah.
was your next?
Yeah, it
What
sounds
was
like
your
it was
next?
a big eye opener.
Yeah, it really was. And I'm a big thing, like I like to know what I don't know, and I knew that right away. Like I was like, hey, I don't know anything about this. And then that's when I
Yeah.
started, and I was working at the time at my corporate job, so just on the side, and it was it? I'm trying to remember. I think it was, I forget what it was, but that's like around the time I started getting my USCA certifications, just because I wanted to learn more for
Yeah.
myself, really, and help out
Yeah.
some friends and family along the way. Because I felt that like if I was coaching them, I wasn't giving them enough time because I was working like a full-time corporate job. So That's really why I started getting the USCA certification, just really for my benefit. Like, oh, this is why we do these things. This is how I should schedule my training and stuff like that. So, and then I just took that and kept going.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think Heidi and I both kind of feel the same way in terms of the USCA training, that it was both something that we were in just to learn more
Yeah.
about the sport and to understand better what we know and don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, because it's still relatively new in terms of like how to coach it, really.
Oh, yeah.
They're still coming up with science-based studies on ultra running because there's really none that are out there. It was always everything from a marathon down. Like, this is your prescribed 20-week workout that you need to do for a marathon.
Right.
And even that's changing a little bit. But really, I think they have probably 100 milers and below they probably have them pretty dialed in into terms of like what you should do. And then even with elevation and stuff. But I think I heard somebody say like anything over 100 miles is just magic, where it's like you hit a point and you just have to, no matter how much you train, it's going to hurt, and you just kind of just keep going. Like that's really all it is.
Yeah. Wow. So what was your next race after that 50K?
After that 50K, I did a self-supported 100K, and that was to raise money for Kara Ames, who's one of my best friends from college, Robin Ames. I'm wearing his shirt today.
Yeah.
He passed away. He got hit by a somebody who was texting and driving on his way home from work. So I wanted to raise, and that was right before my 50K, actually, in 2020. So we flew out, and he was from West Virginia. We flew out, had a celebration of life, and then I think I turned around like a week and did my first 50K. So then I wanted to do something. Yeah, and then I wanted to do something for her and her family and raise some money for them for Christmas. So I did a GoFundMe and a self-supported. I say self-supported, but it was the crew chief was supporting me. And did my own 100K. It was just like a loop out here by my house. I just used like by the beach as like an aid station, which is, hey, if you need to have an aid station, why not have it by the beach? And again, like my mentality was, hey, like you're not running it fast enough, because like by the end I was doing like 12-minute, 13-minute miles, and I was beat up, and I was like, why? Like even after some of the USA training, it's like you still feel like you're not going fast enough. But it was just, again, I really didn't know much about nutrition. I just was eating pancakes and stuff. I didn't switch it up at all, really. It was pancakes and tailwind. But I was able to raise money for them. But that also sparked the idea of starting a foundation for the Robin Ames Foundation, centered around stopping people from, or bring about the awareness of the dangers of texting and driving. So that was
awesome.
the good thing that came out of it. And through that, I really met a lot of great people in the community. I mean, I met the ultra running guys through that, and that led me to Michelle, which was always one of Robin's things, was just connecting people. And it's crazy to see that even, after he's gone, he's still connecting people. So like even meeting you, Heidi, is through because I knew Robin. So it's crazy how that happens.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Awesome.
that one was a good one. I've actually never done an official 100K. That was my only.
Oh wow.
Yeah, just 50K and then self-supported 100K, and then that's it.
And I mean, it's such a beautiful story and such an incredible way to honor a friend and to just carry on that light and that connection and that sense of community that it sounds like was so important to him. For anyone who would be interested in diving a little deeper into the backstory on that, the Ultra Running Guys, there's another podcast called the Ultra Running Guys, and Steve was the very first guest on that podcast.
And the most appearances.
They did a series in 2020 with several different episodes as Steve was preparing to do that 100K, and it's just a really fantastic listen. If anybody is interested in diving into that a little
And I
more.
had a lot smaller beard.
Yeah. 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 And I think like I don't know if you can see this. See my look up live
Oh
on?
yeah, that's perfect.
Yeah. Awesome.
But I think it just sounds like that came at a time when you were kind of your eyes were opened to that you might be capable of more than you thought, and this horrible tragedy happens, and you kind of I don't know, it just sounds like a powerful intersection of your own growth with wanting to do something for him and expand that. It sounds really powerful and very motivating and
Yeah.
kind of,
Yeah, yeah, I appreciate that. And it was like a really good way. I mean, for me to deal with the loss really was just running. Like that was it. So I was like, this is really kind of all I know. So, I mean, he was a big biker, so I wish I would be able to put on a bike race, but I don't know biking.
yeah,
So yeah, it allowed me to kind of process that. And that's what running does for me, and I'm sure it does for a lot of people, is it's a good time for me to get away and then kind of like compartmentalize all my thoughts, or just like a time to think about nothing for,
hmm
however long you're out there. That's the time where you're only truly present. And that's kind of why I love it. And that's why I love the long distance races, is because that's really the only time that there's nothing else exists for however long you're out there. Even the 50Ks, like hey, this is it. I just got to worry about the next step. I don't have to worry about my rent is due. I don't have to worry
Yep.
about work, anything like that. It's, hey, I'm here in it and I can finally be present.
Yeah, I can relate to that. And I think something that I find helpful when I'm embarking on a long adventure, a long race, even just a long weekend run, is
Yeah.
thinking like, okay, for the next X many hours, this is all I need to do. Like this
Yeah.
is my job for the next 3 hours, for the next 12, 24 hours, whatever it is. Like this is where I'm supposed to be.
Yeah,
And I
exactly.
find that really helpful. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, me too.
I can relate to that too. Just the like I mean, I myself have ADHD, and people often ask me like that have ADHD, they're like, how do you run out so long without being like completely bored out of your mind? And I'm like, I think that's the only time that my brain can actually shut down, kind of. Like it's like a singular focus is just
Yeah.
keeping going, and my brain doesn't take in like all the other time I have all these tabs open, in my brain that's like I gotta do this, I gotta do this. But it's like when I can just that's why I love it so much, is because it's just this time to be completely present and like not be thinking about all the other things that are going on. Like it's just me and the trail or the road or the run, whatever I have to do that day.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Steve, how often or how much do you find that sort of, I mean, it sounds like you have a very big picture, deep philosophical approach to running, and kind of, there's like a spiritual connection. Like I can relate to that. There's something bigger and broader to it. How when you're faced with a tough moment in a run, I guess I'm wondering like how does that help you, or how does that fuel you or keep you grounded when it feels like all the shit's hitting the fan and everything's going, or like when it just
Yeah.
becomes, because it's still really hard and sometimes it feels really crappy and we have really low moments like
Yeah. And I know like I don't want to say I like live for those low moments, but that my favorite part in a race is really, and I said it before too, is when your mind, and whatever race it is, and I've run like we're competing in 5Ks for the running store that I work at now, and there's exact times when I feel this in the 5K, is when your body and your mind, like they both agree that there's no way that you're going to take that next step and then you somehow take that next step. And that's really what I love seeing and love experiencing, especially like it doesn't happen in 5Ks, but in like the really long distance ones where there's nothing left. There's really, it's you're at your base form, and that's what I like to get back to. Like there's no ego left, there's no nothing left. You're just existing, and you're existing really in really cool spaces, usually out in nature. And I can't. I wish I could put into words. I wish I was smart enough to put into words what pushes you forward or pushes the next person forward. That after you hit that spot where it's your mind and body are like, there's no way you're at mile 190 and you have 60 left to go. Like there's no way you take a next step, and you just do, and you just keep doing that repeatedly. Yeah, I'm not smart enough to put into words what that is or how people do it. It's just one of those things where you just exist and you just do it. And that's the part I love.
It sounds like there's a lot of acceptance in that for you.
Yep, I'm here, this is what I'm doing, this is what I'm supposed to be doing, and this is kind of what we signed up for. Like when we sign up for races, we sign up for everything that comes along with it, all the good and the bad.
You don't sign up thinking it's going to be easy.
No.
Right.
That's why we signed up for it. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Or maybe you do when it's your first 50K and you think it's only like 5 or 6 more miles on, but
or even like the Holcomb Valley trail run that I did was after my second Cocodona, I think, or third. Yeah, maybe it was the second Cocodona, where it was a nasty 50K. It's up in Big Bear, which is already at elevation. And it's like 6,000 feet of climbing over a 50K. And yeah, but then in my head, it's whenever you start to get, or at least for me anyway, even on the trail, whenever I start to get like, oh, I'm pretty good at this, that's when the trail comes back to kill you, It's like, okay, I'm moving, like even during Cocodona or doing another trail race, I'll be like, okay, I'm moving really well. Like, I think I got this trail running stuff down. I'll hit a rock and I'll trip and fall, or like bust my big toe or something. It just reminds you that no, you don't. You're just a visitor here. You really have no idea kind of what you're doing. But yeah, like at work, everybody's like, oh, it's a 50K after 250 miles. This is going to be a breeze. And then that just got into my head. I was like, it is. It's going to be a breeze. Before. Yeah.
The mindset of like, when somebody tells you, oh, it's only, you're only running 50 miles. It's probably a piece of cake for you now.
Yep.
Like, it's like, no, it's never a piece of cake.
Yeah.
And that just gets in your head subconsciously, and you're like, oh yeah, it's not going to be too bad. And then I was like with the front of the pack. I had no reason to be to the like mid front of the pack for the first like half marathon. And then I walked it out the rest of the way from the half marathon out.
That's interesting. So even after, finishing Cocodona multiple times, a 50K can still hand you your head on a plate.
Oh, it sure
did.
You're
not careful. Yeah.
Yep, it was because I was at elevation, and I probably didn't put in enough, like trail running, and like because it was after Cocodona, I was just kind of like I kept it flat, and probably it was like late June, so like May, so it was only like a month of recovery. So I wasn't recovered from Cocodona, or at least in like racing shape. And then I went out way too fast. Like I used to do, and then I pulled myself back from that. But I just kind of went all out. Like I was hanging with kind of behind Andy Glaze for a little bit, and I was like, oh, I'm not doing too bad here. I could just hang in there. And I had my Cocodona hat on. Everybody's like, oh, did you run it? I was like, yeah. And then all of a sudden, half marathon, I started getting nauseous, couldn't eat anything, couldn't take in any fuel or anything. I was like, well, this is the suffering part, and I'm going to walk the rest of it out. So that's what I did. And I think it was like something like 8 hours or something like that to where.
Do you remember, like, would you be able to talk a little bit more about like your thought process in that moment when you started to realize like, oh shit, I got ahead of myself here. Like, what, what was that thought process and kind of what kept you going?
So, what I normally do is like I try to be very logical about it. So I'm nauseous. Why am I nauseous? Am I low sodium? Am I not taking in enough fuel? Stuff like that. So I tried taking some sodium. I slowed down because it was also hot. So I was like, probably overheating. Let's slow down. And then we'll just try taking a little bit at a time. And then walked. And then I started like run walking to see if that worked, and then that wouldn't work. And then that's in your head where it's like, okay, there's a decision to make. Nowhere near an aid station, really, at that point, anyway. So I was like, well, let's just get to the next aid station. And then I got to the next aid station, did some ginger chews, and normally, I don't know why, but I do now. I think it's probably because of the crew chief, but I usually pack like Tums and Imodium, and I run with a heavy pack just because
Yeah.
in case stuff happens. I didn't have that, and usually that'll save my race if I take a like a Pepto or something like that. But I didn't have any of that, so I was dealing with like ginger chews on the side of the trail, but that didn't help at all. So I was like, well, I signed up to do it. I'm within the cutoff. I might as well just keep going. I'm not a death over DNF guy. Um,
Yeah.
but if there's time on the clock, like the only way I'm probably going to stop, and the only way I'll probably DNF is if I'm injured or if I time out. I haven't hit that point yet where it's like this is too great of suffering. I'm out. Maybe I will. Um, but if there's time on the clock, if I could move, I'll just keep trying to keep moving. Um, and I don't have a problem with people who DNF or who pull the plug at any aid stations. I see why you would do that. Um, I don't know. I guess I just like to punish myself when I make poor decisions leading up to a race.
Even within a race.
Yeah, within a race, I ate the wrong thing or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And I definitely hear through and through with everything you're talking about that message of controlling what you can control. Like breaking things down into small pieces. Like,
Hmm.
looking at the big picture, like, oh God, 15 miles left or whatever can be overwhelming. So breaking it down, like, have I had sodium? What did I eat? Do I have Tums in my pack? Like, what, and I like to say, like, what else can I do?
Yeah.
Like, what else can I do in this moment?
Yep. And that's even the long races, I like to break down into aid station to aid station because your mind really can't comprehend, even a 50K. Your mind's like, I got to be out here for 31 miles and X number of hours. But if you say, I just have to make it to the first aid station, then your mind's like, okay. And then you just do that. You do that along the way the whole time. And that's really how I think I've got done some of the bigger races is just going aid station to aid station. And
Mm-hmm.
pretty much the entire time I'm out there, I say like it's a lot of checking in. I've become a lot really familiar with my body, which is also really great because I had no idea what it was capable of before. So it's just a series of like ones and zeros, like yes and no questions that you give yourself as you're doing any race. Is like, I feel like crap. Yes. Am I injured? No. Like, am I hungry? Like, you just kind of walk down the whole checklist. And that also gives your mind something to do while you're in the suffering, too. You just kind of keep running through that checklist.
I'm picturing like one of those little charts with the boxes, and I'm
Yeah.
certain there's a name for it.
A flow
Like, is
chart.
it
The
yeah,
flow
like the
chart.
little
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So I have
Yeah,
an
that makes
engineering
sense.
background, and I just see that in my head. It's like, okay, here's
That's
the
smart. Maybe I
decision
need to
tree.
make a little one for my pocket or something. Like,
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a great idea.
yeah,
Yeah, the
that's
ultra running decision tree. I love
that,
it.
that's kind of what I was going to ask you next. Is I feel like in races, I reach a point where I cannot think logically. Like
Yes.
I
Yeah.
struggle with, I've had lots of personal experience with DNFs, and I go back to why didn't I just think about that, or why didn't I just do that? after the race, which it's so much, hindsight is 2020, but
Yeah.
do you ever feel like you reach a point where your logic is out the window, and do you just cope in that manner of, that kind of flow chart thought process? Do you tell your crew or your crew chief, like, these are the questions to ask me? Like, how do you do that? Because I'm assuming in a race like Cocodona or something where you're just sleep deprived and exhausted, there's got to be a point where logic is kind of out the window.
Yeah, I think logic is out the window when you sign up for one of those races. That's like
Yeah, yeah, that's
that's
true.
like immediately like
That's fair.
and it's yeah. So I think that's why I kind of lean back on those. Like you don't leave them open-ended. Like if you have those open-ended questions, that's when you start getting like out of your head and out of your brain a little bit. So, but if you give your mind like little chunks or little things to check in on, that helps a lot. But then, like for a race like that, and I don't know how the people do it who don't have a crew or who rely just on the aid stations and drop bags, they're next level. But yeah, crew is like really essential. And my wife, I call her the crew chief. She's the best crew chief. Like she just keeps me moving.
Absolutely amazing. I've seen her in action,
Yeah,
and like she's so good.
Awesome.
yeah, and she's just there it's her by herself. We have no other crew. It's just her.
Wow.
And yeah, she just keeps me moving. And that's
When you
really it.
mentioned, I was gonna say, when you mentioned Tums earlier, like I went to Katie for Tums when I was crewing at Cocodona, and she had everything.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah, she
awesome.
just rolls out her like accordion style first aid kit and has everything ready to go.
Yeah.
But yeah, anything to keep your mind off of like making like the big decisions that helps you out. And to have a plan as you're running into each aid station, and to have even if you should have a plan for the race in general, and then also a plan for, okay, what happens when I get to that point where I want to quit? What am I going to do? And like Mike Tyson says, the best plans are great until you get punched in the face. And you get punched in the face repeatedly at races, especially like Cocodona with the first 36 miles. It's like an immediate uppercut.
Right.
But at least that you have like some outline of a plan. Because if you don't, then you're just kind of like shooting from the hip, and then that's when your brain starts like going crazy. But at least if you have something to pivot from, then that's different. Then you can kind of like ground yourself again and say, okay, I'm a little behind schedule, or I'm feeling like this, and I thought I was going to be feeling like this. What did I say I was going to do? And then pivot from there.
Yeah.
That's a good strategy.
I love that. Having a plan but being flexible, and maybe having different levels of the plan. Something you said really resonated too, which was to not leave questions open-ended, and to really give yourself like, is it this or that? It makes me think, and I've said this about ultra running before, when you're talking to a toddler,
Yep,
you
absolutely.
don't ask like, oh, honey, what do you want for dinner? You say, do you want mac and cheese or chicken fingers?
Yeah.
It's like you give two options and you keep it real simple. Otherwise, they're like, oh, that ultra runner brain is like the toddler brain. So kind of approaching it. That's how I think of it.
That's such a great point. Yeah, that really is. You become, in any race, you start to become that way.
Yeah. And having someone, whether it's your crew chief or a friend, or even if it's like times when I've raced without anyone there, I put notes in my bag. Like having a note in my bag, like, okay, mile 63, X, Y, Z, like just to have, because it's so easy, like you were saying, Heidi, like to lose all sense of logical thought and not be able to focus.
Yeah.
And then you can immediately kind of like get into your emotions, and like they start taking over. Like, I'm never going to finish this.
Compiling,
Yep.
It all just layers on top, and then you start feeling all the things. And
Yep, you start spiraling, which is, I mean,
Yeah.
like I have those thoughts every race. Like, hey, we should just quit. Like that's you're not as good as you think you are. You should quit this, and it's okay to have those thoughts. And like you see them and you feel them and you acknowledge them, and then you just kind of like it's like almost like a meditative state. You acknowledge that they're there. You don't kind of give them meaning, and you just kind of you let them go. Just kind of let them
That's
pass
kind of what
through.
I was going to ask you next, is that you talked a bit about stoicism, and like the mindset you seem to have seems, just from my viewpoint here, you seem really good at like kind of stepping back from those emotions and kind of looking at the bigger picture and kind of grounding yourself. So like if you could speak to like how you use that stoicism, like do you use it in your daily life too? Like are you just, is that kind of how you live your whole life, and it like flows over to ultra running too? Because I find stoicism fascinating. I've read like all the Ryan Holiday books, and like I I love that. So I just am more interested to hear like how you use that to kind of pull you through these races and like your daily life too.
Yeah, I think like so I started getting into that a lot too. Like I thought about controlling the controllables before I even like knew of stoicism. But it's
Hmm.
funny, I kind of found stoicism and ultra running kind of at the same time. So it's really cool how things like that always intersect, and the universe always kind of has a plan for you. Um, but again, it's I try to in my life and my running anything just really boil it down to like control the controllables. And it's also really cool how stoicism isn't about like not dealing with your emotions, but
Right.
it's accepting them and dealing like your response to those emotions
Right.
is really what's you can control, because everybody has emotions. They all have the same ones. They're kind of like inbred chemically in us. But it's like
Hmm.
what do you assign them and how important are they to you and how do you respond to them? That's really kind of one of the key tenets, and that's what I love too. Because I used to be a like quick reaction
Yeah.
fire from the hip, like boom, like this is it. Instead of waiting, taking a second and saying like, oh, what is that? And why is it like that? And then how should I respond? That kind of thing. And then also the crew chief has been really good. She's helped me with that mentality a lot. She's very attuned into the mental side,
Hmm.
which helps me out on the physical side too. Which I think is really good. Another great intersection that life brings you. Like while I was exploring ultra running, she was exploring, like meditation and all of
Yeah.
like the metaphysical type stuff, and we just kind of combine those in our activities, which is great. Um, and I always say, I don't know if ultra running, I don't know if like life prepares you for ultra running or ultra running prepares you for life, because it's kind of
Or just
it just
Yeah.
kind of flows in
Yeah.
and out, I think. Yeah, so like I just try to live that like I was running an ultra running race like my entire life.
Yeah.
Like that's, can you control it? Yes, no. Like or like instead of like can you control it, what can you control in this certain situation? And again, it goes back to what you said,
Exactly.
Michelle. Like what else can I do?
Yep.
And that's kind of like what led me to the decision to be a full time coach. I mean, I was
Yeah.
a COO of a company, and I was making a really good salary, and I was like, you know what, this is just was not for me anymore. And I was like, well, what can I control? You can, even though you feel like you can't, like
Yep.
you can get control not being here anymore. And that was a big step.
right.
And I credit you, Michelle, too, and Gags with being like the front runners of that and being like, you know what, I'm out. I was like, well, it can be done. So
Yeah.
that's when I started my business in December last year. I was, it was not a surprise to my family, I don't think, but it was a surprise to work for sure that they were like, oh, yeah. It was just too much of a stressful situation for me anymore to just like to put myself through that anymore. And I'm just gonna ride out this coaching thing as long as I can.
Yeah. I
Well,
was
there's a
so happy to hear that you had decided to make that pivot and to make that shift. And it's really powerful. And I think it is when you come to a point where you realize something really deeply is not working for you. That's, like you said, that's another example of, well, what in this scenario do I have any ability to shift direction with, and you were able to identify that and do it in such an incredible way to stay true to yourself and to be able to take all of this, like the philosophy and the ethos and all of that, and put it into something that really sounds like gives you a lot more joy. It's so fabulous. Yeah.
Yeah. So much more joyful. And then that comes like dealing with the whole thing too, like I'm not doing enough, you're not like making enough, or like because you enjoy work, you're not actually working. Like that's
Right.
that's what I'm dealing with now, is trying to like identify those things. Like, hey, you're not stressed anymore. Stress equals productivity. Productivity equals like you're being a good person and doing your work. Like now I just feel like sometimes I'm like, this isn't like, just because it's so inbred in you. And I think it's generationally inbred in you that,
Yeah.
because my parents both had like multiple jobs, and it's just like, am I a good person for making this decision? Like, sure, it's helping me, but like, is it the right one? So that's still a struggle, and that's why I think like stoicism helps out too with that, and ultra running too, for sure, because the community, there was not one person in the community that said that was a dumb idea. That was everybody else, like outside the community. Anybody inside the ultra running community was like, yeah, let's go. That's awesome. Way to do that.
Yeah. I left my career at the end of 2022, and it took a very long time, and it's something that I'm still working on, is sort of transitioning from that notion of being uber stressed and super like just go 70 miles an hour, and that equaled doing enough. And it's taken a long time, and it is like rooted in multi-generational values and all of that. But I totally agree that anyone in the ultra running community is nothing but supportive. I've had other people look at me like I have two heads.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. It's really amazing. So I feel like there are still so many different directions we could go. You've got stuff on your calendar though, Steve. What is coming up for you?
I have the Mogollon Monster in September. That's the next one coming up. And then I have the New York City Marathon in November. So I got back into that. So that'll be fun.
That's going to be amazing.
The next big one.
Really, really, really different races.
Different races, yeah. And
with their own unique challenges.
And because I'm working at the running store now, and I'm on the Fleet Feet Laguna Niguel like racing team. I've been running. There was like 4 weeks of 5K, so I've been running. We ran 5K and then a 5K and then a week break and then two more 5Ks left. So training for 5Ks and then a 100-miler at the same time with 18,000 feet of elevation has been pretty crazy. So that's fun. So I have two more 5Ks and then the Mogollon Monster in September.
That's fantastic. And that, I think you said that the Mogollon Monster is your first 100-mile trail race.
It's my first official like 100-mile trail race.
Oh wow!
Right.
Yeah, awesome. So that'll be interesting. Yeah, because I went right from I hadn't even done a 100-miler before doing Cocodona. I just done the 24-hour loop race in
the jackpot.
The jackpot. I just did that, and then it was all trail running training. That was about it. And then so this will be interesting to see this one. And I'm running it with.
Go ahead.
Okay. I was just gonna say I'm running it with a buddy of mine, so that'll be interesting too, because I'm in my races anyway. I don't use pacers, and I don't. I just have Katie as the crew. That's it. So that's going to be an interesting dynamic too. He's a really good dude, he just wanted somebody to run it with him, so I'm going to go run it with him. So that'll be interesting.
So the plan is to stay together?
Yeah, we have to talk about like
Cool.
what happens if one of us starts feeling bad. Like I wouldn't want
Yeah.
if I drop, I wouldn't want him to stop, and I'm sure the
Right.
same thing would be with me.
Yeah.
I was gonna say I love that about Cocodona, that you can just jump in. There's no like qualifications to do
Yeah.
it. There's no, you don't have to have done like 100-miler in a certain amount of time. Like it's just, there are people that have skipped marathon and just gone to Cocodona. So it's
Yeah.
like, just, I think that's one of the cool things about it, is it's like they're like, yeah, welcome, let's do these crazy things.
Yeah, I mean they call it a graduate level race, which obviously it is, but it really
Right.
like it also lends itself, which is really cool, and to see those people too, to be like all walks of life are out there.
Yeah.
And I mean you have the top elite guys and girls that are out there running it and killing it in like whatever, like 50 hours now I think they're doing it. But
Yeah.
it lends itself well, like all of the 200 milers, to through hikers. They crush it. They don't stop moving. They crush it. So it was cool to see a couple of those people on the course and talk to them, and see like how they got into it. And even I got to talk to one of the 73-year-olds that finished it. I ran with him for a little bit, and when we got done and we were on our way home, I was like, Kate, aren't you excited that we have like 30 more years of this? I don't know if you sign up for it,
what was her response to that?
She was like, "Oh, can we just finish this one? Yeah, can we just finish this one for a little bit?" So
that's awesome.
Yeah, because when we're getting ready for the next one, she was like, I feel like we just did it," and I was like, "I know," because she pretty much has to train like I do for the races too.
It's intense. Yeah.
I would say it's more work on her than it is for me, because I mean I'm not thinking about anything. I'm just thinking about like walking to the next aid station. She's thinking about like she barely sleeps too, so it's like, when's he gonna get checking my tracker, making sure when I'm gonna be at the aid station. She's always worried that she's gonna miss me or something like that. So yeah, it's really stressful on her. And you get to see all that in the. I did a documentary this year for
I can't wait for
50.
that.
Yeah, we should have a trailer in at hopefully sometime like mid-August coming out, and I'll put that on my website and stuff like that too.
Oh my gosh,
awesome!
So excited for that. I got to meet
too.
the film crew when they were out there, and it's going to be really cool.
Yeah, they're really great guys, and yeah, I'm excited I got to do it and use the leaving work as like the backdrop for like Cocodona and like my medical condition and stuff like that, with Cocodona as like a through line on it.
That's awesome.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
We're going to be sure to put the links to your website and everything in the show notes.
Thank you.
I was wondering, just like, okay, you're a coach, you've got lots of athletes that you work with. So an athlete, when one of your athletes, if they DNF a race, like something they have worked for months for, it's the biggest challenge that they have coming up. You know they're prepared, they've done the training, you send them off on their way, they come back to you, you get a call that night, whatever it is, you get the message like, Coach, I didn't make it. How do you respond? And what would you say to them when like they're in that crushed kind of moment?
Yeah.
I'm only laughing right now because I was gonna literally ask the exact same question. Like that's what I was like, but
I yell at them repeatedly. Yeah. No, I try to I let them know, hey, like just the race is just the end of like the entire, like the journey was part of it. Like that's just the destination. That's why you have to enjoy the process, and that's why you have to enjoy every kind of step of the way. And then also it's valid to feel that way, to feel disappointed, to feel upset. But like, let's not hang out there. Like I usually tell them, on either side, in victory or defeat. I don't know. I think it was David Goggins that says it, and it's one of the tenets that I get from him. Not a lot of them, but he says like one or two things I'll take. But where it's like you get 24 hours. You lose, you win, you get 24 hours. You get celebrated for 24 hours, but then like if you lean back on it any time past there, then it's you're living in the past, that kind of thing. So let them have, hey, be upset for it for 24 hours, kick rocks, do all kinds of stuff, and that's fine. Let's feel the feelings, because you don't want to push them down, because then that's just gonna, in the next race, that's just gonna creep up again and say like, oh, this was the point I DNF'd. It's gonna happen again.
Right.
And then let's get, because I have a very like analytical and kind of like scientific brain, is let's, after you've dealt with the emotional side of it, the pain, the hurt, let's get into what happened. Like, what do we do right? What do we do wrong? Was it something in training? Was it something during the race? Was it stomach issues? Those kinds of things. Almost like that flow chart, and we'll just do that in reverse.
Yeah.
And then
just break it down into those little pieces. Yeah.
Yep. Again, it comes down to, okay, like, so if it was this, if it was, hey, a thunderstorm rolled through and then I had wet socks the entire race, is that, out of that, what can you control? Should you have another pair of socks in your thing? Should we look at the weather and make sure that we take that into consideration a little bit better next time? Those kind of, and then put steps to make sure that those same mistakes, if we made any that happen, don't happen again on that next race. And I think as you like go up in distances, like those types of chances and everything like that compound. So anything you can put into mistake proof to avoid that is beneficial. So, and I know a lot of people, I think for like the longer distances too, is drop bags. Like a lot of people don't know how to handle their drop bags, with what they should have in it, what type of equipment they should have in it, and nutrition and those type of things. Oh, you've seen my drop bags for Cocodona. Like even my pack is heavy. I think I have everything in there that I that I could possibly need, and so do my drop bags. So
yeah, even that's something I've but was thinking about just recently. Even with a stellar crew chief who is following you along for Cocodona in the van, you know, like in your van that's all kitted out with all the stuff that you need. Steve still did drop bags for every single aid station just in case, because
I think
like
that's
you
so
never
smart,
know. What
though.
if the van broke down? What if something happens?
And it's something I would have never even thought about until this conversation. But I'm like, that's really just smart, because if you don't need it, great. But what if your wife calls you and is like, the van got a flat tire and I'm stuck here and I can't be there? Like, then all your stuff is just gone. Like, you don't have anything. So that's really smart, I think, especially in those longer distances. Like, that's because the farther you go, the amount of factors is going to also increase with it. Like,
it makes me think, during Western States, just very recently, there was an issue where there was a wildfire that happened and blocked a road.
Yes,
and a lot of the crews couldn't get to a point on the road. And I think it was Harvey Lewis whose crew was posting, like, we were not able to get to him to give him his headlamp as night fell. So he had to go into the night starting without a headlamp, because the roads were blocked due to a wildfire. Who would have seen that coming? Nobody would have predicted that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I think that's so great as a coach, that you give them that time to kind of mourn the loss of like the race and like the finish, because I just, speaking from personal experience, it's a true like mourning process. Like you feel like you lost something huge, and like to give them that permission to like, okay, like, yes, feel these things, because it's okay to be disappointed, like, and it's okay to feel sad, instead of just kind of this like suck it up mindset.
Yeah,
Like
you'll
there's
be all
another
right.
race,
Yeah.
there's more races, it'll be okay. Like it's a true
Yeah.
morning. And I don't think people that don't run these kind of races would get that. Like it's like you have given so much. And then also just that reflection on like, that's why it's so important to enjoy the process, because this race was just a tiny part of the whole picture. Like,
Yeah.
let's
Yeah.
look at
It's just
all
a
these
day.
miles you ran.
Yeah.
Like, let's look at everything you've done, because the training for an ultra marathon is an accomplishment in itself, not just the race, you know?
Yeah.
And I think it's so important to have a coach who can like bring you back to that kind of reality and like show you that
Yeah.
bigger picture.
Yeah. And I love that notion of having a time limit on it. Like,
Yeah.
give 20, I think I've heard Courtney DeWalter say the same thing. Like,
Yeah.
give yourself 24 hours and then let's break it down. Let's look at what, you know, what did we learn? What are the pieces that went really well, and where are the areas where we're going to make some changes and improve and do better for next time when we get back up and run again.
Yeah. Because if you start analyzing it any sooner than that, you're going to be emotional about it, and you're not going to come up with the right answers anyway.
And you can't look at it right after you just DNF'd either, because you're sleep deprived, you're exhausted, and like your emotions are high and haywire. And so like everything's going to be, it's like one of those things where it's like, get a good night's sleep and everything's going to look a little bit different in like the light of day. And that's kind of how I always feel.
True.
Like that initial devastation, although learning and sadness can like still be there, you're able to think through it a little more logically. The next day it's like, okay, like what's next? What can I do moving forward? What went wrong? And I mean, I can speak from experience there that it's really important to like, the hierarchy of needs, like let's like get your food, get your sleep, like those are the things like you need first before we can really even examine this. Like let yourself feel the things, but get yourself taken care of,
Yep.
I mean, it's even hard after you finish the race, right? Like that's if you do like that's almost like a mourning period itself too, because you've put all these miles, and then it's like now what? So that's why you should just like
that depression
take some time.
Is like that depression is real after a race. Like even finishing it, it's like, what do I do now? Like
and
that's why if you don't enjoy the journey like the entire way, like then it 100%. Is true that the destination really doesn't matter.
100%. And I really like, even with a finish, I like to break down like, okay, what worked and what did I learn? Like what went not the way that I would have hoped, and what am I going to do different next time? Because even when you do get to the finish line, even if you nail your goal and you hit everything, even if you're on the podium, there's always something that you learn from it and that you can identify that could have been done differently.
I try to always journal it like the next day, like even on a good race. I like to just like, while it's all fresh in my mind, kind of just like write everything that happened down, like from start, like this is how I was feeling then, this is how I was feeling there, and just like scribble it all down. And it may be like, just difficult to read and nonsensical to others, but like to get all that down while it's fresh in my mind, because like your memories change things the farther away you get from it. And so like to write it all down while it's fresh in your brain, so that later, because I mean, even though you give yourself that 24 hours to mourn it or feel happy about it or whatever, I feel like you always kind of go back and think, well, what if I would have done this? And to have like something tangible to go like, no, that wouldn't have worked because this is what happened that day. Like this, your memory's like playing tricks on you now, and to like actually examine what truly happened. I find something to be helpful, at least.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
Yeah, for sure. Well, Steve, it's been so amazing to have you with us.
Yes.
Thanks for having me.
Is there anything else that you wanna leave folks? I will give a plug for you for the Robin Ames Foundation. Please check out the Robin Ames Foundation. Is it Robin J. Ames?
No, it's Robin Ames. It's the RAMESFoundation.org.
Okay,
RAMES, RAM.
RAMES.
Yep.
But there is a fantastic, it's actually a set of races because you have multiple distances in October in West Virginia at Cooper Rock.
It's Cooper's Rock State Forest. It's like right outside Morgantown, West Virginia.
Yeah, so anybody on the East Coast, if you're looking for a good race in October,
Beautiful
fantastic
there.
trail race. And the distances, you now go, what's the range of distances?
We do a 50K and a 50K team relay, which this year you get to compete against the board, which is myself and Kara and yeah, I think we're all going to do. Kara, his widow, and Emily, his sister, will be there, and then a couple other friends of his will be doing. We each do like a 10K loop, so 50K,
That's
50K
so cool.
relay, and then a 25K, a 10K, and a 5K, and then like a 1 mile fun run for the kids. Yeah, it's a really cool.
So there's something for everyone.
Everybody,
yeah.
Yep. It's really cool. It's like the 50K, and it's no joke either. It's like 50K, 5,000 feet of elevation. Yeah. But yeah, it's really good. So we're hoping to grow that. It's gotten bigger every year. Hopefully it'll be a little bit bigger this year. It's October 5th.
Okay, October 5th, 2024. There is also a virtual option. You doing the virtual again?
Yep, you get all the same swag bag as the people who come to we'd love to see you there, but if you can't, sign up for the virtual option. All the same distances, except for like 50K relay. If you want, we can figure something out with that. But you could do all the other distances, and yeah, it's been really fun, and it's a good way to like keep his memory alive and also promote like the dangers of distracted driving. It's a very like grassroots approach to it, and you know, if I could just we could stop 1 or 2 people from doing it, that could help 1 or 2 people down the line of not having to go through what we all went through with it. So yeah, but it's like he loved Cooper's Rock, and it's just a really cool spot too. And the energy is always there, which is great.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
All right. So everybody check that out. Anything else that you want to leave folks with?
Nothing. I mean, besides like myself, I have some more spots open for coaching. Awesome. Anything from 5K to 250 plus ultramarathons, and I've been through all the distances, so that I have that experience as well as on the USK side. Yeah, that's pretty much it. And just control the controllables. That's really what it boils down to.
That's great. We'll link all your stuff in the show notes, your website, your social handle on Instagram, so that they can check that out.
Yeah, my Runfluencer Instagram.
Yes. Awesome. Thank you so much, Steve, for coming on. I really enjoyed this conversation. And thank you, everybody, for listening. We've said before, and Steve's a great example of it. It doesn't just have to be about DNFs. We want to talk about those like races that don't go as planned, the tough moments, and kind of how we cope with them and learn from them. Because there's, even if you don't DNF, doesn't mean your race was a stellar day. So just maybe shining light on those things. So if you have any ideas for the show, please reach out to us. If you have ideas for guests or you yourself want to come on, you can catch the link to that on our Instagram page. So yeah, thank you guys so much for listening. We'll catch you next time. And remember to stay curious. And embrace the challenges. All right. Bye, guys.
All right. So good to see you, Steve. Bye, honey.
Yeah, nice seeing you. Thank you.
All right. We appreciate your support so much. If you enjoyed the show, please remember to leave us a review and subscribe so you never miss an episode. Tag us on our Instagram at Let's Run That Again and give us a shout out when you listen. And as always, we welcome feedback from you and are open to ideas and guests for future episodes. Reach out on our Instagram or email us at letsrunthatagainpod@gmail.com.